Most of the time in church, especially, we think of sexual immorality. That's the big sin. If somebody's sexually immoral, then boy, they're in big trouble, and then God's really going to deal with them. But you know, those passages in the Bible that talk about sexual immorality often talk about other sins right next to them. Slander, gossip, debauchery, you know, pride, greed. It actually says greed is idolatry. Well, in the West, we have a whole bunch of greed. And the thing is, we justify the greed in ministry by having, and many times, churches the size that we don't really need, having equipment that we don't really need. And the problem is that we begin to depend upon those things. The resources that God gives us the ability to get, we begin to depend upon those resources more than we depend upon the Holy Spirit. We do the same thing with our education. I went to seminary. I'm thankful for seminary. I'm thankful 4 years. I'm thankful for that. I thank God for that. But if, and I ever do, and when I ever have depended upon that education more than I have on the Spirit of God to come through and to use me, I fall short of what otherwise would be possible. So it's not, God's not going to use me because I've got an education. He's not going to work through my church because I've got a nice building or because we've got nice equipment in the church. Yes, God can use all those things, but when I depend upon anything, more than I depend upon the Spirit of God, I'm jeopardizing the movement of God's Spirit. And I think in many of our ministries, unfortunately, case in point right here, in my own life and my own ministry, I was operating in the power of the flesh, calling it the power of the Spirit, and the Holy Spirit actually had very little involvement in it. But you can't masquerade the work of God. You can't fake it. The problem is that many times we're going around saying that this is a work of God when actually it's a work of man, because man can do an awful lot. But the Spirit of God can do more in one moment than man can do in years. And that's what happens when God pours out His Spirit in genuine revival.